So, The Acolyte Season 1 has finally concluded. I've tried to make this video a few times. I've even tried to make a little bit of a script for it, but I think it's better if I just give my raw thoughts while looking at my wallpaper engine Darth Revan. And you know what, man? Let's just get into it. The Acolyte Season 1 gets a lot of hate online, and a lot of that is honestly from people that haven't even watched the show beginning to end. It's mostly people that take buzzwords from headlines and YouTube titles or 30-second clips from episodes and take it at face value and just shit on the show for that without actually getting context, right? I know people in real life that do that, and it's a real shame because they try and argue with me why a show is dog shit, even though they've seen a 20-second clip from episode 3, which shows like just a weird, awkward part of the episode without the full context. And it's really annoying when people do that kind of stuff, but it is what it is, and you just kind of have to deal with it. It's been tough trying to find conversation about the show online without it devolving into absolute degeneracy, which is a common theme in the Disney era of Star Wars because a lot of people just don't like change, and they they can't accept new things in the universe. It always has to be about Luke or Anakin Skywalker, and it can't damage anything or what they believe will damage anything in the existing universe, which, you know what, I'm not even gonna bother getting into that. Let's just get into why I really like the show, and I think it's better than some of the stuff we've gotten, like Mando season 3. I think it's better than Book of Boba Fett, and I think it's a lot better than the Kenobi show. And I'm a huge prequel fan, right? Obi-Wan and Anakin, Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, my favorite actors and characters in all of Star Wars. And I think that show absolutely, like, I mean, I like all the shows generally, but it is the weakest for me. There's only that one moment at the end that really like worked for me. Everything else was kind of just mid IMO, but it is what it is. Anyway, when it comes to the Acolyte season 1, we have a couple characters that really stand out, and by couple I literally mean couple. I think Soul, played by the Korean actor whose name I actually have on my second monitor here, Lee Jung Jae, I think is how you pronounce his name. He does a phenomenal job as portraying as Master Soul. I think Soul comes off a lot like Qui-Gon Jinn. At least in the beginning, he comes off like Qui-Gon Jinn. Later on, it almost feels he feels like his own character later on. Early on, he does feel a lot like Qui-Gon Jinn. Later, he really gives into his emotions when you actually find out what happened on Brendok 16 years before when the show takes place. And you see his emotions, which, Jedi aren't really supposed to have these kind of emotions, or at least they're not really supposed to express these kinds of emotions, right? Because you get emotional attachment, which he had very much for Osha, and that can lead you down to a dark path. And in this case, it didn't necessarily lead Soul down the dark path, but it did get him killed, and it kind of led Osha down a dark path with what happened on Brendok. The other character that I really liked was the Stranger, also known as Chimere or Chimere. I forgot how you pronounce his name. Played by Manny Jacinto. Jacinto? I think that's how you say his name. Fucking phenomenal. Absolutely like the greatest acted Sith character, dark user, dark side guy we've gotten in a very, very long time. Way better than the Inquisitors by a large margin. Like, honestly, I think he's better than Kylo Ren. He might be the best thing since Darth Vader himself in the Star Wars universe. He's really, really good. It's well acted. He fights a lot of his scenes. He's the one actually fighting, that actor, Manny J. Even when he's wearing that helmet, which, by the way, Cortosis, amazing. Great addition. I know that's from Legends, from the expanded universe. I'm glad they really brought it into canon, though I think they did it in the comics recently or a book. But I'm glad to see it in live action. That was really cool. His fighting style was sick. It was wild. When he had that Cortosis gauntlet on his like forearm, and he was using his helmet in that fight against all the Jedi in episode 5, the best sequence I've seen since Revenge of the Sith was those fights. Episode 5, phenomenal. 10 out of 10 episode for me. It worked really well. And then obviously his fight at the end with Soul was amazing too. The way they slashed through the walls with their lightsabers, the like slow-mo jump off that little bridge was really cool. And that like little samurai slash at the end where Soul actually broke the stranger's lightsaber, really sick. Which, by the way, speaking of his lightsaber, having it be like one kind slightly longer hilt where he can pop out the bottom and it's like a short blade, sick. that was fucking cool. Other than those two characters, everyone else was pretty alright. I think Daphne Keene as Jackie was pretty cool. I think she did really good. Her choreography was sick, along with Manny J. When they were fighting, that was phenomenal. That might be better than Soul versus Kamir at the end. I think Jackie versus the Stranger was pretty sick. Maybe my favorite. At least the way he takes her out is pretty sick. Where he pulls out the little short blade and he stabs her 3 times just to make us know that she's actually dead. That was cool. Speaking of making sure someone's dead, bro, the way he snapped Yord's neck in episode 5 was crazy. And I actually liked that little interaction where Yord actually grabbed the helmet, swung it at the Stranger's lightsaber, but then the Stranger hits Yor's lightsaber with the gauntlet because he had cortosis on his forearm, like I mentioned before. And then the Stranger snaps Yord's neck. That was crazy. And I think Yord as a character was okay. They are, I thought they were going to be more of like a main crew kind of thing, but it was clear at some point that it's just the main cast is Soul, May, Osha, and the Stranger, and I guess you could say Vernestra by extension, who I think was okay. I think her character was decent. I haven't read the High Republic books, though I have 4 of them, including Light of the Jedi, which I believe is the first one. And I know some details from that book, but other than that, I don't really know the character as a whole. But Vernestra, the way she's portrayed, I'm not a biggest fan of the actress and the way she executed it. Towards the end, there were some moments that I did kind of like when she's speaking with the senator, and that little speech the senator gives her in episode 8 was pretty sick, where he said something like controlling themselves or whatever. And she's like, oh, we don't control the force. And he said, not the force, your emotions. It's inevitable that one of you is going to snap. And are you going to be strong enough to stop him? That was a nice little, nod and wink to what's going to happen in the future with Anakin Skywalker, right? That was really cool. Soul's death hit me, but it didn't hit as hard as something like Tech's death from the Bad Batch. It was enough where I felt sad, but it didn't get any tears out of me like some other stuff in the Star Wars universe. I think what really did tug on my heartstring is when he whispered, "It's okay," right before he died. That was sad. And Osha killing him is really tragic considering the start of the show, how much they built up their relationship and how much Soul did really care about her. But ultimately, his decisions is what led them to that moment. It's like when Darth Maul says to Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, every choice made has led you to this moment. Similar thing. It's just an absolute tragedy what happens at the end of season 1 of The Acolyte. I think Soul getting pinned for everything that's happened makes a lot of sense. It all ties together really well. I know people were complaining about Mundi being in the show. Who cares? Like, it doesn't bother me. I know a lot of people complain for some reason that the Stranger mentioned he's been around for a really long time and he's just a person, he's a human. Who cares? It's really not that big of a deal as long as the main idea that the Sith aren't really being seen or being talked about is like the main point, right? The Stranger caused a lot of damage. He killed a lot of people in this show, a lot of people. And it was all covered up and pinned on Soul, swept under the rug. Jedi move on to the prequels where they become war generals and, destroy everything basically. I have to mention the one moment in the show that made me stand up and just say, holy shit. Now, the finale, I said holy shit, I think 3 times. But the one that made me like stand up and shout holy shit was seeing the one and only Darth Plagueis the Wise. Bro, it blew my mind. Literally, once I saw those crawly fingers, I knew like we're about to see either Tenebris or Plagueis. And once they showed like a little bit of his face and that like long flat nose thing that he's got going on and the yellow eyes, I freaked the fuck out. I had to pause the episode and like go for a little walk to get a bottle of water. Blew my mind. It was so awesome to see, which is why I hope we get a season 2 because I want to know what is going on between Plagueis and the Stranger. Are they connected? Is Plagueis stalking him or is trying to recruit him? Or is Plagueis currently the apprentice to Darth Tenebris and the Stranger is Darth Venomous, I think it's called. I read a little bit about how in Legends and Expanded Universe, Tenebris had Plagueis as his apprentice, but he was also training someone on the side, kind of breaking the rule of two. But still, they could be pulling from that. The Stranger could possibly be a rival to Plagueis. But who knows? Either way, to see him in live action or in any media that's not the book, absolutely fucking incredible. And I'm so happy to see that. And I really want a season two just to see that. Which, speaking of season two, if we get one, the stranger and Vernestra, their relationship, it's established at the very end and confirmed that he was her former Padawan before he turned to evil. I gotta see how that ends. I need to know. And I don't want it in a book. I want it in a show. I want to see it on screen. Please renew the Acolyte. Give us a season two. I think the show is great. If you couldn't tell already, I really like the show. I don't really know what was going on with them adding Kylo Ren's theme into the show a couple times. It's still possible that maybe the relationship between Plagueis and the Stranger is that the Stranger is not a Sith, which is why he would say to Soul, "Oh, Jedi like you might call me Sith." It could be that he's kind of just a dark side user and he's going to be the founder of the Knights of Ren, though I think that's established in the comics. I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't be entirely against it if that is where they're going with it. And Plagueis was just kind of stalking him because, like, the fuck you doing over there? You're not a Sith. Why are you causing trouble? We're supposed to be hidden, and you're kind of flashing a red lightsaber around. That's not very cool. We're gonna come after you. Who knows? I need to see how that ends. I really got to see it. Disappointed in the lightsaber whip. I gotta say, disappointed in it. I knew Vernestra had it from the books. I haven't read those books yet. I'm currently going through the Thrawn books, the Thrawn trilogy, specifically the very first book I'm still on. I'm halfway through. Regardless of that, I knew she had the lightsaber whip. I saw in the trailer, and pretty much what you see in the trailer is what you see in the show. I was hoping we would see a little more. It feels like a tease, and hopefully if we get a season two, Vernestra, will have to go against the Stranger, her former apprentice. She knows he's alive now, which is what I assume she went to go talk to Yoda about at the very end. The final scene is her saying, "Apologies, Master. I have to talk to you about something." And I think she wasn't referring to the whole Soul situation. I think that's already done and swept under the rug. Rest in peace, Soul. But you've played your part. We've covered it up. I need to talk to Yoda about my former apprentice still being alive and what the history is there. I really need to know because he's got the lightsaber, the lightsaber whip like scar on his back. The Stranger. I gotta know what happened and why it happened. Personally, I would not mind if they took the Acolyte and said we're gonna make it like 4 or 5 seasons or something, and it leads directly into Phantom Menace. I think that would be really cool, or at least a couple years before Phantom Menace, or at least maybe even until just Palpatine becomes Plagueis' apprentice as like the final scene of the show. I think that would be really cool. And we got to know what happens to the twins. Osha and May are still out there. Obviously, they could cover it in a book or a comic or something, but I want to see it on screen. These are like established characters. I do care about them. I didn't really care halfway through the show. I didn't really give a shit about the twins, but by the end, seeing how they flipped essentially is such a cool dynamic because I don't know why I didn't actually expect them to go with it. I thought they would just stick with Osha good, May bad. But the idea that where they are at the end is basically where they were at the beginning, but it's flipped where Osha's the bad one and May is the good one. I think that's such a cool dynamic. And May lost her memories. Osha bled a lightsaber crystal, which is the first time we've seen in live action. I believe we've seen it in the comics. And then in Jedi Survivor, we see Dagan Gera, who is from the High Republic, by the way. We see him bleed his lightsaber crystal right in front of Cal. Though the way they did it there was just a little different, but still really fucking cool that we got to see it in live action, and the way it was executed was badass. Maybe with like Osha and May, it's an idea of where you can't have both of them be light or both of them be dark. One has to be light, one has to be dark. That would be a really cool dynamic between two people that are supposed to be the same person but split in two, which was done supposedly by the mothers, Mother Coral and Anisea, I think her name was. Anakin Skywalker was literally created by the Force. The Force was like, we need to create this guy right now to combat what the Sith were doing, which was Plagueis fucking around trying to create life, influencing the midichlorians to create life, which is what he told Anakin Skywalker. which is what we're kind of seeing in the Acolyte, right? Though it's a little different from what I understand from the show. Whatever Vergence is on Brendock, which I think is just that tree, is what allowed that like weird Night Sister witch cult to use the Force to create life, or maybe Plagueis was directly involved with them. Who knows? There's a lot of ways they could go with that. They created the twins through a Vergence in the Force, and whatever Plagueis ended up doing later, or maybe this is what he was doing, whatever it is, the Force itself created its avergence in a person by creating Anakin Skywalker later. It does not break the lore, in my opinion. I know a lot of people were complaining about it. I was one of those people before I even watched the show, because I started watching once episode 4 was out. And a lot of people were saying, oh my god, this ruins the arc of Anakin Skywalker or ruins his character because we have new people created by the Force. It's not a big deal. It's actually pretty different, the circumstances and how they were actually made. So it's really not that big of a deal. It's not like breaking any sort of canon. That being said, I don't think there's much else to really talk about. You know, the two main characters, the two best characters in my opinion, being Soul and the Stranger, were just absolute highlights for me. I think the choreography was incredible. I think the story is really solid. I think it's really good. I like the fact that we saw Darth Plagueis. That truly and honestly, that cameo is actually a highlight for me. Out of all the Disney shows and movies we've gotten, seeing a Darth Plagueis cameo actually like got me extremely hype and put might be my favorite moment in Disney Star Wars. Though having Hayden Christensen come back as Anakin Skywalker in Ahsoka is actually probably my number one. Plagueis showing up here just for 2 seconds is my number two spot. Like that was incredible. That really was fucking cool. And I want more shows to go further back in time. Maybe we'll see one day this big boy over here, Darth Revan, in a live action show. Or the KOTOR remakes, which if those ever come out, could be changed slightly to be canonized where it fits in the canon. Who knows? I mean, I think they relatively fit in canon already, but regardless, that's my thoughts on Acolyte. I think the show is really good. I give it an 8 out of 10 personally. The main drawbacks being some of the performances, specifically from Osha and May, which is played by one actress, if I'm not mistaken. I think she was a little weak, but I get it. It's hard to act with yourself and to yourself. It's a little tough, though I like the dynamic of one of them always being light, one of them always being dark, and if one falls to the dark, the other one goes to the light. That sounds like a really cool dynamic. Darth Plague is showing up is cool. Choreography is best we've seen since the prequels. Maybe some of the best ever. I really like the Cortosis fight in episode 5. Sick, amazing, 10 out of 10. I think that little weird badger dude, Basil, was kind of annoying and kind of dumb. But I get it. You want to sell toys and want to have a little funny dude for the kids. I get it. It is what it is. I think the show is really good. I hope we get a season 2. And that's about it. See ya.